Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Thursday. If you're wondering why you're seeing me, because it is the burning platform, but we don't have Gareth here today. We've got Jack Motlanthe.
Good morning.
And see news all over the world.
There we go. We should have sound now.
Is the sound back up? Please let us know, guys, if the sound's back up. Jack is working on it, trying his best. No, still no sound.
How do we not have sound? Yes, now we're back on. There we go.
Guys, and I had such an amazing intro. Now I must start again with my amazing
Please. Sorry
intro.
about that. Sorry about that.
I'm Phumi Mashego, and thanks for joining us this morning. The audio is back up. I'm sorry about that this morning. We're having a little bit of a late start, but this is the kind of crazy that we're dealing with in 2024.
And you know what? Like, I think we can be afforded a little bit of grace.
Why?
Because there are bullets flying everywhere, Phumi. And
their
President
pages
Trump
exploding.
is ducking under them, you know. The man can't even play a round of golf.
I was quite surprised that he is playing a round of golf. And to help us, and this is our lead story. This is, even though there are pages exploding in the Middle East, there are bullets flying in Florida, and there is a 350,000 Rand round of golf with the deputy president tomorrow. We're going to spend a little bit of time chatting with, he is not a stranger to this show, Brooks Spector, who is the associate editor of the Daily Maverick. He's joining us, and a former US ambassador. So he is going to chat with us about his experience, what his views are, and I'm hoping with his ties back in the US, he has some on-the-ground information that he can share with us. Welcome, Brooks.
Well, good morning. Morning.
So before the sound went off, I was telling them that when I said, how should I introduce you? You said as a general layabout. So the people know. The people know. We also have, because we like to bring in new voices on this show, and we like to keep all our listeners not just engaged on the comments in the comments section or listening to the podcast, but if you have views, if you have ideas, you can definitely always get hold of us on
contact@podcastparty.co.za.
And you too can be like Treasure, who is joining us from KZN this morning, who is a fan and a listener to the show, and he calls himself a Black conservative, which I was like, I look at this thing, I was like, what does that mean? So he's joining us this morning also to share his views, because Treasure, I hear you are also a Trump fan.
Yes, I am. I am. Good morning to the listeners, by the way. And yeah, I am.
Well, let's jump straight into it, because Monday morning for us, waking up here in South Africa, we woke up to the news of yet another Donald Trump assassination attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy story. A man in the bushes. Luckily, this time didn't get to fire off a shot. And was thwarted by the Secret Service, who were doing not a perimeter sweep, but walking ahead of him, one hole ahead of him at the time. And what we know about this particular shooter is, Brooke, you were saying earlier, a bit of a nutcase, because everything we've heard is crazy about this guy.
Yeah, he was recruiting people to go fight in Ukraine, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely. So, Brooks,
Well, he was. Yeah, he said he was recruiting people to go fight in Ukraine, but had not had any success in any recruitment. And the Ukrainians apparently gave him the polite brush off, saying thanks, but no thanks. One of the problems with the Donald Trump phenomena is that it attracts very, very strong opinions. It attracts very, very strong behaviors. The young man in Pennsylvania, by most standards and by most rational values, should never have been allowed within 100 meters of an assault rifle. But yet there he was with an automatic rifle on the roof of a building 150 meters away from the podium, firing at the candidate and killing at least one other person and killing one person and wounding several others. And as of this moment, there's no indication of his particular political, economic, social, emotional values other than he was a young man with an assault rifle. In the case of the man in Florida, an older man who has a checkered career and a list of run-ins with police in various jurisdictions that stretches back over the years, there he was hiding in the bushes for 12 hours, waiting for Donald Trump to pass by. Now, you ask the question, why doesn't the Secret Service protect him from that kind of thing? Can you imagine having to patrol and control the perimeter of an entire golf course that is set in the middle of an urban area in which there are trees and bushes and waterways all around it? A golf course, by its very nature, is a huge piece of territory. You would need an army of people next to each other, standing next to each other, to successfully patrol that. You contrast that with Barack Obama's experience as a golfer. He went to play golf, it is true, and usually he played golf on the golf courses that were associated with military bases, which meant that there was already a controlled perimeter that had been managed and maintained and thoroughly institutionalized, which meant the Secret Service was doing its follow-on and advance work rather than trying to control multiple hectares of territory. Very hard to do that.
Well, I absolutely understand that it could be hard to do that, but we are also in the 21st century, and I'm just like, drone technology. There's so many other things, but I think, and one of the things, even as they are busy with the follow-ups and the investigation into what happened at the first assassination attempt, there's so many things to talk about. And I first want to talk about not just, is this a failing or a success of the Secret Service?
Yeah.
Because even though this guy was hiding in the bushes, and we're here now for something like 12 hours, right? So he was hoping for a chance, and the chance presented itself because nobody knew that Trump, it was a last minute decision for him to go out and play golf on that day.
Yeah,
they spotted him and he didn't get to fire a shot.
Like when you look at this thing in its entirety, from the first assassination attempt to the second one, it seems like someone is asleep at the wheel. I'm not trying to put any conspiracies out there, but from the attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan right up until now, Trump, it would seem as if the Secret Service had their ducks in a row right up until Donald Trump. I'm not trying to spin any conspiracies, but it does come across a little suspicious that the one person who has been consistently being compared to a character like Hitler, for argument's sake, is the one person who's ducking bullets.
Which
Well,
not strange.
Let's not be fair. Let's be fair about this. Ronald Reagan was shot at close range by a deranged man who thought that it would be a way of getting Jodie Foster's attention if he killed the president. That's not the general definition of rational behavior. Gerald Ford, who was president before that, was shot at twice and escaped once because the weapon, a pistol, didn't fire. Now, and there have been 4 presidents since 1865, 4 who were killed by assassins' bullets. Only one of which was killed by from a long distance. The other 3 were shot, the way you would if you were saying hello and how are you and standing next to you, and then taking out a pistol and shooting you. The problem is, and you're going to catch some flack for me saying this, but the real problem is not that there are people with delusional ideas about their relationship to the president, but the absolute ubiquitousness of firearms in the United States. There are more firearms than there are people. And if you have the interest and the desire and enough money to buy them, which is not all that much, you can buy a rifle. You can buy one that can be adapted to be effectively a rapid fire assault rifle. And if you are of such a mind, you can perch yourself on the roof of a building and then wait for a president or an ex-president or a would-be president to come past and take a shot at them. And this is a feature of American society now, sadly.
I think that the relationship that America has with guns, there's only one other country in the whole world that has a tied number of assassinations with their president, and I think it's Spain. So America is leading the pack, and there's no doubt that America has a deranged relationship with its guns. But what I'm also quite interested in, we're 6 weeks away from Election Day, and obviously what this has created is it's created a tension that has also now kind of is escalating, in my view, a little bit hot. It's created an incredibly hot environment in the political rhetoric in America, whether it is Elon Musk tweeting that nobody is shooting at Kamala Harris, which also deranged, right? But also the way that these candidates and these two parties are now talking about each other and what this means, right, has also escalated and seems to be raising the temperature. Sure, Donald Trump, for me, is an incredible media guy. He knows how to use the medium. He knows how to use media, whether it is him talking about him eating cats and dogs, and a debate that there is no argument he lost, has suddenly become about the memification of Donald Trump and what he says, and is dominating the news, dominating social media. And what that also has done, speaking of raising the temperature, is I was astounded to hear that in Springfield, Ohio, over the past couple of days since the debate, something like 30 bomb threats. The hell? What is going on? Is this normal?
But we have to look at it like this. I think I'm in the minority here, but I think the whole situation is not so much on the Republican side; it's more on the Democratic side. And the reason why I say that is, if you look at all the elections not all the elections, but the recent elections in the USA, you will see that all the candidates for the Republican nominees have been demonized by the Republican Party and the Democratic media, so to speak, left-leaning media rather, to say that, if you elect a Republican into office, you will lose your rights, you lose your democracy, you will lose your gay rights, and so forth and so forth. And we've seen that time and time again happen and play out, where John McCain was demonized, Mitt Romney was demonized, and now Trump. So this is not somewhat of a new thing that is happening in the US election. It is obviously new in a sense that obviously Trump has been, there's been an attempt on his life twice now, but it's not a new thing where we see the rhetoric being toned up to this level. And it's something that has always been consistent, especially on the left, where they will use very aggressive wording in terms of describing Republicans. Yeah, these ones, they want to take away your rights. They are a threat to democracy. You won't be able to vote. They will back slavery and all these things. So these things are not new. And if you are in a environment where social media is now the center of everyone, I mean, people now get their news on Twitter and TikTok and so forth and so forth. If people are now then receiving this information, the only alternative to that, or the only response to that, especially from people who are deranged, is to take the life of the person who's a threat, so to speak, to democracy. But it's quite funny, or not even funny, but interesting, because
Treasure, may I cut in there and ask you a question? So are you saying that the only person, the only people in this campaign who have been doing any kind of outsized demonizing of the opponent are the Democrats, and the Republicans have not? Is that what
they
you
have?
said?
But they have, but there is a difference though in the demonizing, because I'm sure you've never heard a Republican calling a Democrat Hitler or communist Mao or something like that. They do criticize the policies of the.
Treasure, that's crazy.
Kamala. Hold on.
But it's coming.
Hold on.
Okay.
Donald Trump calls Kamala Harris Comrade Kamala. Same thing. No?
But it's coming from
Phumi, can I just jump in?
It's coming from
I appreciate your concern, but in the most recent presentation by Donald Trump, he specifically, since I watch all the debates and I watch all the press conferences and I read the transcripts, and I don't especially read all the social media because I want to go firsthand to what people are actually saying. Donald Trump accused Kamala Harris of being a socialist, communist, fascist, all in one sentence. Not once, not twice, multiple times. He accused her of being brainless. He accused her of being incapable of carrying out a coherent thought or statement. His running mate, J.D. Vance, accused Democrats of accused legal immigrants in that small town in Ohio of stealing people's pets to eat them, and that the Democrats were supporting this.
Like I've seen rhetoric where they report these kind of things. Now, is it outlandish? Sure, but if there's
it is outlandish, and it's also not true. That's the problem.
Surely there is. I mean, I think what the Republican Party has failed to do so far, by my estimation, is to get their message across in a way that is effective. Because the issue in Springfield, Ohio, is the fact that migrants, or at least immigrants, are being flooded into these small towns all over the US, right? And that seems to be something that the Democrat Party is happy with. The Republicans, unfortunately, are doing a horrible job of bringing that issue to light. Saying that people are eating cats and dogs might sound insane and on the face of it, but I think the message behind what they're saying is, we've got an immigration problem. Build a wall.
There's a difference.
But also, here's the problem. Here's the problem.
And stop building the wall, have they?
And the problem is there isn't, with regards to the Springfield issue, it's not that they are creating some conspiracy. They are asking people to actually even investigate these issues, because it's not something that is coming out of nowhere. When people are actually complaining, even in their commissions, about these very same things. So it's not a matter of that the Republican parties are just making up that people are eating cats and dogs. There have been complaints about those things happening. And unfortunately, they've not been effective in bringing up those issues. And so for us to act as if they're just making things up, I think it's going to be disingenuous. It is happening, well, allegedly happening. And it's a matter of highlighting also the issue of immigration, because remember, what happened in Springfield is that there were 20,000 illegal immigrants that were put into that city. And so now it's been overrun. And another thing that illegal, yeah, well, legal.
Legal
and also,
immigrants.
I'm agreeing with you. And also another thing that we also have to highlight, and I don't think the Republican Party has been effective in doing so, is the fact that, I mean, there was an issue with the Venezuelan illegal population that have taken down or taken over buildings in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. And that's also another issue that they could highlight to show that, hey, look, their policies have been bad in terms of migration and illegal immigration and border crossing, because that's their platform. That's the platform that they're moving on, but they've not been effectively communicating their message. And so when they say these things that are outlandish, or this, I would say, small issues that happen at a very district level, and they put them in a national context, everyone thinks it's crazy, which is obviously what's happening and creating a media buzz on it.
I mean, Phumi, can I interrupt here now?
Look,
first of all, the Springfield was a small city of around 50, 60,000 people that had been in an economic downturn for over a decade. The major industries that were there had moved away. Business people, owners of businesses, were inviting immigrants to come there and help revitalize the town. They were inviting them to come in and take jobs that were being created, but which were not being filled. And no business person in Springfield has complained about the work ethic of the immigrants. And the person who started the story about the puppies and kittens, I don't even call it cats and dogs anymore, because I think it's, we talk about puppies and kittens being consumed at dinner. That person admitted a couple of days ago that she misunderstood her neighbor's complaint entirely. There is no report to the police. There is no report to the civil authorities that anything like that has happened. If you're a pet owner, you know that occasionally your pet wanders away. My cats previously had a certain amount of wandering. They come back, okay? So what the news in Springfield that was most fascinating to me was that hundreds of people who had been there before this new wave of immigrants came together and went to Haitian restaurants as community dinners to say, we are with our new neighbors. Not everybody, obviously. The issue of immigration is not a uniquely American phenomena. We live in South Africa, and sorry.
The thing is, what makes it a lot more difficult, I would imagine, if you are in Springfield or Ohio, and something happens involving a foreigner, let's say specifically from Haiti, for argument, from Haiti, excuse me. It's been reported that a lot of them don't drive well in the States because obviously they drive on different sides of the roads, but there have been multiple accidents that have been reported with Haitian people behind the wheel. Now, if you are a white American and something happens to you, if you report the case, you risk being labeled racist. For argument's sake.
I think this particular 3 minutes of a conversation is exactly indicative of what has happened in this particular election, right? And this is what I think Donald Trump is so good at, and this is why this election is also still so too close to call, basically, right? He is able to release rabbits, is what I call it, release rabbits into the media and get everybody chasing after this particular thing in whatever way, and distracting from the bigger issues, distracting from all of the policy issues. Springfield, Ohio, a town with how big is the population of Springfield, Ohio?
50,000 people, yeah.
As a percentage of what the voting public in America, and the fact that even all the way over here, we would be so caught up in this particular conversation. But I'm also interested to see, and hear from all of you guys, as this particular tension is escalating in the US. There is, and one of the things that have been a big talking point in the election too, is America's involvement in the Middle East. And having seen what yesterday, we woke up to the news of pagers going off, 1,300 thousands of pagers, and I think almost 3,000 people injured and 14 people dead. And yesterday afternoon, reports coming in from Lebanon of solar panels exploding, radios, two-way radios, walkie-talkies, as we call them here in South Africa, exploding. And America has now come out to say, we are not involved in this. And again, escalating tensions in the Middle East and what that means, if anything, for the American election. 6 weeks to go. What's your view, Brooks?
Well, I've done a fair amount of examination of the data on voter attitudes, and you know what let me run them down for you as to what the survey data says. The first issue, and first of all, let me say I like your idea of releasing rabbits. I think I'm going to steal that and make use of it, because I think it's of a particular tactic, tendency, and success. I think it's a perfect description. I like it lots. I'm not even going to give you credit. I'm just going to take it. Pretend I thought of it. All right, how about that?
If you need a copyright lawyer, I'm here.
You said it in public. It's out there. It's public. It's generic data now. Look, the survey data is very clear about the issues that inform the electorate, and I'll run them down for you in order of their mention. First is immigration. We understand that is a very large topic with all kinds of chunks and pieces floating in it, but that's the issue that more people say is important to them than anything else, regardless of its merits or lack of information. The second theme is what I refer to as kitchen table issues. The question of personal economics, cost of living, cost of interest on home purchases or car loans, et cetera, et cetera. The third issue is women's reproductive rights, and that animates. And those three issues are grouped right at the top. Okay, and they are all seen by people as really important. You have to slip down rather further on the list to find climate change, environmental issues. It's way down on the list. Foreign policy issues, foreign policy from the American perspective. Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the situation in the Middle East. Those are the two top foreign policy issues. But they're only mentioned by 3 or 4% of people responding to this kind of surveying. Also down there in the weeds, but related to the economic question, is the question of the US-China tension. It's not strictly speaking a foreign policy issue anymore. It has all the aspects of domestic economic questions. But the key point that you need to take from that is that that in the same way as has been true throughout American history, except in times of war by Americans, when they are actively involved in fighting, foreign policy issues usually are very much further down the list of issues people are concerned about. Not surprisingly, you are, I am, we're all concerned by things that are much closer to us than we are about things that are much further away. Now, a footnote on that foreign policy issue, if you go deeper into the data, certain interest groups have more concern about foreign policy issues than other. And let me tick them off for you. First of all, there is, although it is not a huge number of Americans, it is politically salient in a couple of states, and that's Muslim Americans or Arab Americans, mostly in the Middle West, places like Michigan. Jewish Americans have a particular interest in the Middle East, but keep in mind that they are mostly living in states that are going to vote Democratic almost by definition. California, New York, New Jersey, states like that, some in Pennsylvania. A third group is people whose heritage is Polish or Ukrainian, and they're concentrated in states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois. And as a result, while we here are deluged by information about the dire circumstances in Ukraine or Middle East or Middle East, broadly speaking, say from Gaza on through to Iran, most Americans are not making their political decisions on the basis of those foreign affairs issues, at least not yet. And there's only, as you say, 6 weeks or so left for the election to take place. Now, add one more factor into it. The election takes place November 5th, but many people will have already voted by advance or mail balloting by the end of this month. All right, end of sermon.
Early voting has opened. I want to say something, but I also want to ask a question about that early voting.
Yeah, I actually wanted to find out from Treasure some of his thoughts in the lead up to the election. Like what I've picked up is a lot of people's political opinions depend on where they get their political news, right? So if you are a fan of CNN, in all likelihood, you're going to be a little left-leaning. If you're a fan of Fox, you're going to be a little right-leaning. So I just wanted to get an indication from Trevor where Treasure, where you see the election looking like in the next couple of weeks. I mean, we are 6 weeks away.
Look, I've been called Trevor many times, so it's not a train smash. I think it's my second name now, Trevor. But to answer your question, look, I always try as much as I can to look at both sides and what both the sides are looking into. For example, I listen to your Fox News and what they are looking at and focusing on. I look at your CNN, your ABC, your MSNBC, to see what they are focusing on and what they are saying about the election. But I also have gotten into the habit of looking at independent media, especially on YouTube, because that's also a deciding factor for independent voters, because that's what both parties are gunning for. So I have a feel that Trump might win. And the reason why I say this is when you look at the polls in the USA, when you look at Trump versus Biden, Biden was leading by approximately 8 points in the polls when it came to the swing states. Right now, Kamala Harris and Trump are neck and neck in the swing states. And we have seen time and time again with Donald Trump that he is able to come from behind and win those states where people are saying he's not going to win them. And so I think he has a better chance of winning. But the problem that they are having and the problem that they're facing is that their messaging is all over the place, especially with Donald Trump. He's rambling a lot and not focusing on the key issues as highlighted by Mr. Spector, which is the economy, which is the border, which he has to highlight foreign interventions, that's a very minority issue for people to decide on who they are voting for. They can bring it up, obviously, to say, hey, we don't want to start any new wars. We don't want to get involved in any new wars. I mean, even Kamala Harris did say it, that in the debate stage, tried to highlight that particular issue. And so it is an issue that is concerning to the American population, but it's in the minority, so to speak. It's not an issue that you can run on and win on. And so those are the issues that they have to tie down, and especially with the Republican Party, when it comes to reproductive rights, they have to tie down that issue and make clear their policies, because the Democrats are very, very good and effective in saying, hey, women, don't vote for these people. They're going to take away your reproductive. They're very good in that messaging. So I think, in my take and in my estimation, I think Trump is going to win based off of those factors, that Kamala Harris is not messaging herself enough, especially to swing the polls in a sense where she will be leading by 3 points, 4 points, 5 points ahead of Donald Trump. And that will become a problem come election day, because obviously we've seen through history that he's able to come back from behind and win the election, or at least come close to winning the election. So, I mean, we'll see, but
I love the fact that all these polls, I obviously watch the polls and hear all of the stats and that neck and neck and who's sitting where. And I have recently gone down a serious rabbit hole with the historian Alan Lichtman. Brooks, Alan Lichtman, for your benefits, Jack, is a historian who has predicted, he's got a formula. And having looked at every single US election since the beginning of the democracy, he has been able to predict correctly the winner of the election since 1982.
Okay.
Barring, I think, 2000, which ended up in court or whatever. And he released his prediction, and he's got flags, right? So the way that he does it is he's got flags that say these 6 indicators or more, this is the person that's going to win.
Okay.
And interestingly, he has called it for Kamala Harris. I don't know if you've seen this, Brooks. Have you seen Alan Lichtman's prediction yet? And he has called it for Kamala Harris.
Now, I was going to say, I've read his comment. I've also read Nate Silver's comment, which Silver is actually, it is a positive genius at 2 very different things: professional poker playing and statistical analysis of voting trends, and the model that The Economist magazine uses as well. Now, one thing about the polls that we always have to remember: polls are not predictive. Polls are a snapshot of what people who say they're going to vote say they're going to vote in the way that they're going to vote. And it, to some degree, you can be fooled by the trend lines of polls.
Yeah.
And so what I find that I do is look at what are called polls of polls. That is, the data from 6, 7, 8, 9 different polling establishments brought together to see if collectively they show a trend. And if that's true, then you begin to see the outlines of where an election is going to go. And you have to remember, now, God help me, I studied statistical analysis in university years before any of you were born. So, it's, as a result, I have to dredge my memory to find the right words and the way of explaining this. But there are 2 key elements in polling that matter a great deal. One is the coefficient of reliability. That is, how certain that data is of being an accurate reflection of the opinions of the people that are asked. And the second is the margin of error. That is, if you say it's a 95% reliable poll with a margin of error of 3% either way, that means there's a 6% degree of possibility that we're wrong, and 5% that our data is completely confused or wrong. But if all the polls are pointing in the same direction, and if they are all showing movement beyond that margin of error, then you begin to say that the polling data says that Kamala Harris is likely to be the winner. So but there is still a ringer. Sorry?
Yes, but
there's still a ringer in all that. I beg your pardon? No, the problem is that voting is not a national phenomena. It takes place over state by state by state, and you win the election not by winning a simple majority of votes. You win by winning a majority of the electoral votes, that is the demographic weight of each state, totaled together. And for Treasurer's benefit, I should actually point out that Donald Trump has never won a majority of the popular vote, and he's only won one election by a minority of the popular vote, because there were a number of smaller party candidates who took a percentage here and a percentage there, and the end result was that he won that electoral vote but lost the popular vote by a margin of 3 million votes. So it's not a foregone conclusion that he wins and wins and wins. In fact, the trend line is that he loses and loses and loses. And in 2022, when he said, I want this person to be the Republican candidate for Congress in the 2nd District of State X, most of his picks lost. And as a result, it's really hard to say that he has managed to build a movement that draws in a majority of voters, because the data doesn't support it.
Well, I mean, if we're going to take things honest over here, neither Kamala Harris hasn't won an election either.
No.
If we're going to be
she won 3 actually.
Now she hasn't won an election either. Now we can go back and forth.
She hasn't won a national election, because she's won elections.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, on at the level we're speaking about right now, we haven't seen her actually contend for a position nationally, right? And at this, I'm also in mind what happened at the debate. She did have a better showing than Donald Trump, and it might lead a lot of people to believe that that might be a good indication that she might ultimately become America's next president. But there is a growing distaste for how the Democrat Party ultimately ended up with Kamala Harris as their nominee. To be honest, before Biden stepped down, Kamala Harris was not viewed in the highest regard. She was not in front of cameras. She didn't necessarily do too many interviews. I don't think there's too many people in the US that have any sort of connection to her in a similar way that they have to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is divisive. People know whether they like him or hate him. Kamala Harris is a little bit different, to me at least, from a outsider's perspective. Treasure, I don't know if I'm going down the right path here, but do you think that it's as simple as what that gentleman you mentioned just now, his prediction that Kamala would win?
It's not a simple prediction.
What is it? Statistics?
It's not a simple prediction.
No, it's not. It's not. And also, we have to.
Treasure, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on this, because I'm one of those people that isn't too impressed with Kamala Harris, if I'm being honest.
No, I think me and you share the similar sentiment, because, like you said, she's run before, and she dropped out before the primaries could even get on the way. She was not popular with the voters. They did not particularly like her when she was running for the Democratic ticket. So it's not like she's a new, fresh candidate that no one knows. They know who Kamala Harris is, in a sense that she's run before. And also now she's not doing a good job in sense of going out there especially, and this is a big complaint that I always, and criticize that I always have of her, which is she's not going out enough to show the American voters who she is and what policies she stands for. I mean, to hate Trump or you or love him, he's gone to the alternative side of your CNN, your MSNBC, your ABC, and so forth to do interviews and basically put his legs on the fire to try and explain his policy positions. We're not seeing that with Kamala Harris. And basically what the Democratic strategy I see as I'm looking at it is the same strategy as 2020, where they hit Joe Biden. You don't do anything. You're basically just doing your rallies. You going to the people that obviously love you and already are convinced of voting for you, instead of going to, for example, platforms like your Fox News. Go to independent media platforms like Trump is doing now with streaming services. I mean, he's gone to a lot of streaming services where he's trying to appeal to young men, appeal to the young vote. We're not seeing that much of enthusiasm with regards to Kamala Harris. She is a good candidate. She's well-spoken, but the problem that she is having is she's not going out there enough to put her policies forward. And I think that's going to hurt her in the long run, in a sense that as Trump is getting more exposure and she is getting less, people are going to be convinced rather that Trump is the better option. And so she has to find a way to balance that out. But I think at this point in time, she's not doing a very good job in her campaigning strategy.
It's almost like entitled arrogance. Like, why do I even need to campaign? I think I've won this already. That's how it comes across to me. It's just me. Just me.
No,
Just me. Just
Are
me.
you watching my facial expressions?
Are we watching?
My facial expression.
And actually, I disagree with you both, because I actually think that Kamala Harris's biggest challenge is not Donald Trump. The people who are going to vote for Donald Trump are going to vote for Donald Trump. You're not going to convince them otherwise. But what she does have to do is she has to convince the undecided voter. People who are going to vote for the Democrats are going to vote for the Democrats. People who are going to vote for Trump are going to vote for Trump. And where she has to be, and I think that is exactly where she is playing, is convincing the undecided, is convincing those people who don't show up to vote to go out and vote. And that's where the magic is. I think that's where the magic is, because we sit and we watch and we watch the platforms that we watch, right? So when you say, why doesn't she go to Fox? To do what? Those people are going to vote for Trump. They're Trump supporters. She's not going to convince them otherwise. But convincing the undecided voter is where the magic is. And I'm not sure if Trump has what it takes to convince the undecided voter.
But remember, now Trump has RFK on his pocket. And so you can't exclude that vote that RFK is going to bring to the Trump campaign. So if you're saying that she's not supposed to go to Fox News for because they're now convinced, remember, there's RFK followers that are watching Fox News. And so she can switch some of the votes. I mean, Trump has done a good job, especially with RFK Jr., to actually say, hey, look, I'm partnering up with Democrats. Look, I have Tulsi Gabbard on my side. I am partnering with Democrats to show that I'm not just some whack job. I'm trying to be in the center and accommodate even Democrats. And Kamala Harris has not been shown to do that. And so, like I'm saying, the messaging part of it, you can say it's irrelevant for her to go to Fox News, but people will question, how are you going to deal with Putin if you're not going to deal with Fox News? Because that's going to be the talking point. That's going to be the talking point that they'll capitalize on. So those are some of the things that you need to bear. I think they need to bear in mind when it comes to things like this. I mean, even with the debates, she got criticized a lot because she only agreed to one. And Trump was going out and saying, hey, I want 3. And then after the debate, she's like, I want another one. And they're like, no. Why didn't you agree in the initial proposition to you? So those are
Brooks,
the things, I mean.
Yeah.
Brooks,
look, you have hit, Phumi, have hit on the key aspect of the Harris campaign, as I understand it now. There's no point in trying to convince a person who obsessively watches Fox News 22 hours a day and records the 2 hours that they're asleep, that she is the better option. Those people are where they are almost regardless of fact. And there's no point in worrying about it. You're not going to go on Truth Social, which is the Donald Trump patented online service, because in both cases, the interviewers are already showing their allegiance in very, very direct and obvious ways. There's nothing to be gained. To win the election now, let's get real about the election. Forget about RFK Jr., forget about Tulsi Gabbard, forget about Jill Stein, forget about Cornel West, for that matter. The place to win it is, and it boils down to this: suburban households in the suburban counties around places like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and Raleigh-Durham in North Carolina, and around Phoenix, and in the suburban areas near to Las Vegas in Nevada, and in the suburbs of Atlanta. And those people historically, up until about 20 years ago, those were, well, Nevada's doesn't count because there wasn't all that much suburban area 20, 30 years ago, but the others, those areas were historically white, middle class, generally college educated, Republican in their leaning, in the old style of the Republican Party. They are no longer that. And if you look at the survey data, that's voter-rich territory. It's not flyover country, it's where the votes are. And Kamala Harris has a disproportionate lead among white, college-educated, suburban women who would have a generation ago probably been Republican, but are now Democrats, primarily, not only, but primarily because of that third issue that I talked about, women's reproductive
Brooks,
rights.
I want to ask you a question. We've got a few minutes left, and I really am interested in knowing about the counting and the vote system as it works in the US. How does the early voting get counted, and does it get counted as the votes come in and only reported on voting day? And on voting day, how the counting happens, so that as we're watching, even for newbies, right, watching this election, what are we looking out for if we were to send election observers? I think we need to send America our IEC, but it won't accept that. How does that, what are the, because there is also plenty of talk about people not showing IDs to vote, which is what we're used to. You have to show your ID, you have to be on the voters roll, people not being asked for IDs, people mailing in their ballots, as well as lots of talk about election rigging. So how does that work? How does the counting work? And when does it happen?
In brief, remember, there's no national election, actually. It's an election state by state by state. So that there's no national authority that does the vote counting and reporting. In case of advanced voting and vote by mail, you get a ballot, and you have to indicate your choice. You sign it. You put it in a sealed envelope. You sign that as well, and that goes into yet a second envelope, which is mailed. Those votes are sequestered until election day. They're not opened. They're not counted. And in most states, the day of election voting is counted first. And so you see in the vote reporting, you see sudden jumps in the number of votes for candidate A or candidate B, because districts, their data is now reported back to the central authority in each state. And then at a certain point, time X, all of those advance ballots, all those vote by mail ballots, they're counted, and that total then goes into into the number as well. In a couple of states now, virtually everybody votes that way, so that you don't have the long lines in front of voting booths anymore in places like the state of Washington on the Pacific Coast. You have most people voting by mail advance balloting. Each state runs the election separately, and then that data is then made available to a coalition or a cooperative of news agencies, which report it and provide it to the various news channels and newspapers and wire services and so forth, which is why you'll sometimes see differences in the way in which the voting is reported, because one news source will be using data, say, from 9 o'clock in the evening, whereas another one might be using it from 10 o'clock. And then the other one catches up, and so there are disparities. In point of fact, studies have shown that nationally, there were 3,050 or 3,049 verifiable fake votes, people who were not eligible to vote, who voted and were caught. But that is such a small number when you consider the entire voting field is like 150 million people. Now, you don't vote unless, if you're voting in person, your name has to appear on the voter's roll. It's kept state by state by state, or precinct by precinct by precinct, because you actually voted a precinct. If you're voting by mail, then the name and the signature has to match the voter's roll in that state. Keep in mind, there's no national ID card in America. There isn't one. People tend to think the social security number is an ID card, but it isn't. It's simply a number that's assigned to you for the purposes of tabulating your payments into the national retirement system. So as a result, the assumption is you will show up with some form of identification that will be verifiable. Driver's license, passport, perhaps, some other kind of thing. But the number of actual cheaters is so small, historically, that in every case in the last election, in every case except for one, and there were close to 80 of them pushed by the Trump campaign and its allies, the judges either threw them out because they were ridiculous, threw them out on grounds that there was no data, or threw them out because the arguments didn't make sense. There was one that was tossed out because it was technically not argued well in the brief, but that's irrelevant. In point of fact, it's very hard to vote illegally and very easy to vote legally. Now, interestingly, one of the people there was a Republican congressman who was found to have tried to vote, Republican congressman, tried to vote in 2 districts. Well, the problem was that he moved. And so the voter registration roll reflected an old address and a new address, different counties. And as a result, he may or may not have tried to vote twice. Not clear, but he may have.
Like, as I'm listening to you, Brooks, like, it then becomes understandable to someone who is somewhat of a conspiracy theorist that illegal foreigners are being allowed into the country to add on to the votes for the Democrats. I'm not saying it's true, but you can understand why someone would be able to make the connection between this this influx of immigrants who would in all likelihood vote for the Democrats because the Democrats put into legislation that this could happen in the first place. You can understand why people on the right might just be a little bit freaked out by all of these things. It's not crazy to assume that.
You can understand, but let's be real about it now. If you are an undocumented or illegal immigrant, the last thing in the world you want to do is to come to the attention of the police or the authorities anywhere. And as a result, the studies do show, for example, that they pay taxes even though they don't get the benefit of it. You know, if you're there with a fake Social Security number, you're paying into it. You're never going to be able to claim against it. If you were caught voting illegally, that would be grounds. That's a felony in every state, voting illegally. You'd be guilty. You'd be sentenced to a crime, which would guarantee you would be on the next boat, train, bus, whatever it is, on your way out to some other place.
There's also this interest.
It's not a strain. If you are in a country illegally, breaking the law shouldn't worry you. You
worry a lot.
But anyway, let me leave that one alone.
There's an interesting judgment in Pennsylvania, actually. I'm not sure if you saw it, Brooks. But it says basically, and it comes back to the issue of mail-in ballot, as Phumi was asking. The judgment basically says that you cannot date your ballot incorrectly because it will be invalidated. And there's a lot of criticism that has come to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, because they're saying that no, dating should not invalidate a ballot. But now the logical conclusion should be that, you can't put an incorrect date on the ballot and then expect it to be valid. I mean, that's I think it's logical, but it goes back to the issue that Brooks was raising with regards to voting.
I think that case revolved around the understanding that on the second envelope, on the envelope, not the ballot itself, on the outside envelope, that you dated it incorrectly. You may have, for example, used the European style of writing a date, even where it's day, month, year, as opposed to the standard American style, which is month, day, year, but not the ballot itself. And that was the distinction that I think has to be clear, that the ballot itself has to be dated, signed properly. You can't vote for all the candidates on the ballot, because that obviously shows you didn't, you did something, but it wasn't what you planned. And there are always going to be cases. I take you back to the year 2000. There were 3,500 and some odd ballots that were the subject of a debate back and forth furiously all the way through the court system till it reached the Supreme Court, in which George W. Bush basically won, as the comedians say, he won the election 5 votes to 4, because 5 Supreme Court justices ruled in his favor.
The truth of the matter is that the next 6 weeks are going to be yet more of the roller coaster.
Yep.
Yeah. There is such a thing that they sometimes call an October surprise. So I'm holding my breath that whatever that October surprise is, it's not a successful assassination attempt on Donald Trump.
Amen.
Because that would create serious chaos. Gentlemen, thank you as always for your time, for your energy, and for your thoughts. Thank you for coming on. Treasure. I was expecting you to have that voice, but gay.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Thank you, Brooks, for your time. And Jack, thank you for coming in and spending the morning with me.
Yeah, no, it's been fun. It's been interesting.
We're gonna
and my conspiracy theories will leave the studio now.
Can I give you the one October surprise? A correspondent for a major international newspaper told me on the phone the other day, the only October surprise that hasn't really been projected yet is extraterrestrials landing on the lawn outside the White House. That would be the
wow.
That would throw everything into chaos.
If that doesn't typify how crazy 2024 is, I don't know what else.
Guys, I have to go back and watch that Cat Williams interview, because I feel like there's a clue there. Close the portal. Thank you, gentlemen. Happy Thursday, y'all. Thank you to all of you in the comments. Thank you to everybody that listened into the show today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you again next week.
Take care.